One day, you're a half-broke apprentice bard with more ambition than coin, wandering from one mossy village to the next. The next, you inherit your uncle's tavern, the Gilded Mug, in a cursed valley where the chickens cackle prophecies and the mushrooms judge your fashion choices. It wasn't much to look at when I arrived. The door creaked like a banshee with arthritis, and the roof slumped like it had given up on life a century ago. The bar stools had fewer legs than a competent spider, and the cellar smelled like fermented socks. But it was mine, and it was bustling with opportunity. Not the kind of opportunity that sane people chase, mind you. No, I'm talking about the kind where the regulars are dwarves who pay in polished bones, the ale glows blue if it's poisoned, unless it's troll venom, then it glows green, and bards duel with lyrics instead of lutes. My first night behind the bar, I poured mead for a wizard who claimed to be on a diet but still ordered 6 buttered boar pies. He paid in riddles, one of which turned out to be a summoning spell for bees. Not metaphorical bees. Actual, winged, angry bees that now live in the rafters and hum any minor. That same evening, a goblin named Crick tried to sell me vintage moonlight in a jar. I said no, so he tried to trade it for my left sock, which he claimed was sacred. I declined again, but he came back later with a bouquet of enchanted dandelions and a contract scrawled in goblin runes. I still don't know what I signed. Every third Tuesday, my hair glows pink. It wasn't easy running the place. Supplies had to be foraged, bar fights had to be refereed, and once, a sentient keg tried to unionize the furniture. I had to learn the difference between goblin ale and goblin ale. The latter is flammable, how to calm down a drunken banshee, soft jazz and lavender tea, and what not to feed a baby mimic, anything you want to keep. But for all the chaos, there was something magical about it. Like the time I hosted open mic night and a skeleton poet reduced a room full of orcs to tears with a sonnet about lost femurs. Or when I brewed my first original ale, Shadowberry Stout, which accidentally opened a minor rift to the astral plane. The spirits were polite, though. Tipped well. And the tales? Oh, the tales? Every guest brought a new one. A knight who fell in love with a siren, cursed to hear her voice in his wine. A thief who stole the moon's reflection and tried to pawn it for 2 tankards of grog. A weary alchemist seeking the flavor of his childhood and crying when I served him warm honey bread cider. The tavern didn't just serve drinks, it served memories. Stories. Lives. Of course, not all nights were filled with laughter. There was the time a plague of whispering fog tried to seduce the patrons into the forest. Or when the hearth caught fire, not with flame, but with laughter like a roaring chorus that wouldn't stop until we sang along. I still don't know how that one ended. I woke up with ivy in my boots and a raccoon wearing my apron. Yet, for every strange twist, I learned a little more about myself. I was more than a wandering bard. More than an heir to a forgotten name. I became a keeper of stories, a brewer of dreams, and a friend to the lost and lonesome. My tavern was a beacon in the wild, a place where weary feet found warmth and weary hearts found song. And maybe, just maybe, that's what my uncle wanted all along. So, if you ever find yourself in the valley of mist and shadows, listen for the music. Follow the scent of roasted garlic and wild berry pie. Push open the door of the Gilded Mug. I'll be there, behind the bar, polishing a tankard and ready to trade tales for a smile. Your first drink is on the house. Just don't sit on the stool that hisses. She bites. It was the 7th full moon of the season when the trouble really started. Now, if you've never lived in the valley, that might not strike you as odd. But locals know that when the moon shows up for a 7th encore, it's not there to sign autographs. It means mischief. Magical, inconvenient, probably ends in fire kind of mischief. That evening, I was restocking the shelves with a fresh batch of oakroot bitter, aged 3 weeks in a barrel previously owned by a retired forest nymph, when Crick the goblin came back. He slammed a jar on the counter and grinned. This, he announced, is liquid misfortune. Did you just bring me cursed moonshine? I asked. He nodded proudly. I sighed. Crick, we talked about this. But it's a vintage curse, he insisted. It only affects people named Trevor. Do we have anyone named Trevor? Not yet, he said with suspicious cheer and vanished in a puff of glitter. I buried the jar behind a loose brick in the cellar. You'd be amazed how many things I've had to hide down there. Like the singing spoon collection or that one sentient cheese wheel that keeps trying to stage a jailbreak. Later that night, a group of dryads came in for a bachelorette party. I didn't even know dryads had weddings, but apparently one of them was marrying a tree spirit named Oakley. They ordered a round of forest fire shots and insisted on dancing barefoot on the bar. Every step they took left little sprigs of moss and wildflowers behind. The bars never smelled better. Of course, that was also the night the tavern started growing. Literally. I woke up the next morning and the main hall was 3 feet longer. The fireplace had grown a second chimney and the rug developed a pattern of shifting stars. I don't know how it happened, probably something to do with that elf who paid for his ale with a pinch of distilled wonder last week, but I decided to just roll with it. If the tavern wanted to stretch its legs, who was I to stop it? Besides, it was good for business. A troupe of gnome illusionists rented out the new space for weekly performances. Their opening act involved turning the audience's hair into butterflies. Not metaphorically. It took hours to sweep the ceiling. One of the butterflies still lives in the chandelier. We've named him Bernard. But not everything was as delightful. There were whispers that the king's tax collectors were on the move again. And not the human ones, oh no. These were the royal ferrets. Creatures enchanted to sniff out undeclared income, hidden gold, and unlicensed magical brewing. Rumor had it they could sense guilt from 50 paces and had a taste for socks. Which was, frankly, a problem because I hadn't paid a single copper in taxes since I inherited the place. So I made a plan. I bribed a local witch with 3 jars of ghost pepper honey and a signed copy of The Lusty Lich, Volume 2, to enchant the tavern's ledgers. Now, any inspector who opens the books is immediately overcome with the intense urge to organize spoons. So far, it's worked. Still, things weren't exactly peaceful. Last week, a traveling scholar accidentally summoned a floating eye that critiques your fashion sense. It followed him for 3 days, screaming "Velvet is so last season," until he finally left town in tears. I offered to let him stay, but he said the tavern was too judgmental. The rug did trip him on the way out. And just 2 nights ago, a barrel of raspberry ruckus exploded mid-song during karaoke night. The culprit turned out to be a jelly spirit who thought we'd stolen her berry soul. I made peace by promising her a weekly gig as our featured guest. Her rendition of "I Will Survive" was haunting, literally. Glasses shattered. One of the mirrors still shows a completely different reflection on Tuesdays. Through it all, though, I never stopped loving the place. It may be a magnet for chaos and a beacon for the bizarre, but it's home. The laughter that bounces off the beams, the clink of mugs raised in celebration, the quiet stories shared by candlelight, those moments are magic in their own right. Some nights, when the fire is low and the patrons have gone to bed, I sit at the bar with a mug of lavender cream stout and listen to the wind outside. The tavern breathes softly around me, its walls filled with memories, and I swear I hear it hum. It's not just a building. It's a story that keeps telling itself. And I'm just lucky enough to be its keeper. So come by again. There's always a stool waiting, a tale to be told, and a drink with your name on it, unless your name is Trevor. In that case, maybe stick to water. It was a stormy evening when she walked in. The wind howled like a drunk ogre with a toothache, rattling the shutters and sending sparks up the chimney. Most of the regulars had gone home early, save for Old Man Thistle, who might actually be a haunted coat rack, jury still out, and a drowsy pair of pixies passed out in a teacup. She stepped over the threshold without a sound. Tall, cloaked, dripping with rain and mystery. You know the type. Every good story needs someone like her, someone with a secret and a destination they won't reach without getting at least mildly cursed. I gave her a polite nod. Welcome to the Gilded Mug. Pick your poison, just don't choose the green bottle on the second shelf. It hisses. She didn't smile. Instead, she reached into her satchel and pulled out something that looked like parchment but moved like water. A map. It shimmered with ink that crawled and realigned itself every few seconds. I need information, she said, voice smooth as honey with a razor floating in it. And you serve more than ale here, barkeep. Technically, I'm the owner, I said, pouring her a mug of stormroot cider. But sure. We also serve stew, scandal, and unsolicited advice. She set the map down. It showed a forest I'd never seen. Trees the size of towers, winding rivers that spelled words when viewed upside down, and a marking, a red spiral, deep in the center. Written beside it in flickering glyphs was a single word, Velkrin. I frowned. That's not a place. She looked up. It's a song. And that's when it started humming. The map. Not her. It gave off this faint, melodic drone, low, pulsing, and oddly familiar. Like a lullaby half-remembered from someone else's dream. My mug trembled. The floorboards shifted slightly underfoot. This tavern has roots, she said. Not just timber and nails. Memory. Magic. History. And the map recognizes it. Now, I've heard my fair share of nonsense, but something in the way the shadows flickered across the walls made me take her seriously. That and the fact that the map had just tried to wrap itself around my left hand. I gently peeled it off and poured myself a double shot of deep earth brandy. She leaned in. The Song of Velkrin was once sung by the eldest bard. They say it holds power over memory and reality. But the verses were lost, scattered. Some ended up in enchanted objects, others in places forgotten by time. And let me guess, I said, you think one of those verses is here? No, she said. I know it is. At that exact moment, Bernard the chandelier butterfly dive-bombed the map and exploded into blue sparkles, which frankly confirmed it. We spent the next 3 hours tearing the tavern apart. Behind the wine racks, beneath the floorboards, inside the hollow leg of the cursed piano stool. I even interrogated the ghost in the pickled egg jar. He was unhelpful and extremely salty. Finally, we found it. Stuffed behind a loose stone in the hearth was a crumbling napkin, singed at the corners and smeared with gravy. Scrawled across it, in drunken calligraphy, was a single line. In dreams we drink what truth won't show, sing once the name, and shadows go. The melody came unbidden. I hummed it without thinking. The room breathed. The walls straightened. The air thickened like it was listening. And outside, beyond the mist-fogged window panes, the storm went silent. She snatched the napkin with trembling hands. This is one of the verses. The third, if the pattern holds. With this, the spell might be complete. Then she stood, pulled her cloak tighter, and gave me a look I still don't quite understand. You're part of this now, she said. Whether you like it or not. I tried to protest, but she was already out the door, swallowed by fog and fate. The next morning, the map was gone. So was the stool that tried to unionize the week before, probably unrelated, but I'm suspicious. Since then, strange visitors have been arriving in ones and twos. A blind harpist with silver strings. A dwarf who speaks only in rhymes. A talking raven who won't stop asking if we serve metaphors on tap. They all carry fragments. Songs. Hints. Lines of ancient verse disguised as lullabies, bar songs, or riddles baked into gingerbread. And each time one sings, the tavern changes. Grows. Remembers. I think it's becoming something more than it was. Maybe something older. But I'm not afraid. Because I've found my place not just behind the bar, but in the tale. So if you ever hear a tune in the wind, soft and strange, and you follow it through the fog and find yourself standing before a crooked old sign that reads the Gilded Mug, step inside. We're expecting you. Bring your story. Bring your voice. And for heaven's sake, don't touch the napkin. One morning, I came downstairs to find every mug in the tavern floating 6 inches off the shelves. They weren't spinning or glowing or spewing poetry, thank the stars, but they hovered there, absolutely still, as if waiting for something. I muttered a few words I'd picked up from the gnomes, probably unwise. I'm still not allowed in their sauna, and reached for one. It gently rotated in the air and nudged my hand away. Respectfully. That was when the floor shifted. Not creaked. Shifted. The whole tavern gave the slow, deliberate shudder like it was stretching. Trying on a new form. Waking up. Then I heard it. A sound that came not from the hearth or the cellar, but from the very beams and bones of the tavern itself. A hum. Low and deep, familiar. The same melody the cloaked woman's map had sung, now echoing from the wood, the stone, the brass fittings of the bar. I backed up slowly. Okay, I said to no one in particular. Let's all stay calm and remember that architecture should not have a soundtrack. But the tavern wasn't listening. The chandelier shook. The windows flickered, not the glass, mind you, but the views. One moment they showed the village green, the next, a desert of singing sand dunes, then a ship sailing through clouds. The fireplace spat out not flames, but swirling images, places I'd never seen, faces I'd never met. It was dreaming. The tavern was dreaming. And then, without warning, it walked. The entire foundation lifted. Stone unrooted itself from earth, wood folded like limbs, and the gilded mug rose onto 4 great legs made of beams and support columns. The ground quaked. The wine bottles clinked in panic. I screamed. Just a little. And then I laughed. Because of course this would happen. Of course my tavern would grow legs and decide it needed to go somewhere. It had never been normal, not from the start. And deep down, I think I knew it was never meant to stay put. I raced outside as the village watched, slack-jawed and mildly drunk, as the gilded mug turned slowly north and began to walk across the field, gentle, steady steps, creaking rhythmically like a lullaby played by floorboards. What in the 7 soggy realms are you doing? I shouted at it. The tavern replied by swinging open its door with a dramatic whoosh as if to say, are you coming or not? So I grabbed my apron, a fresh keg of honey pice ale, and jumped back inside. That was 3 days ago. We've crossed forests that shimmer with light and laughter, rivers that run backward on weekends, and a mountain that apologized for the weather. The tavern walks at dusk and rests by starlight. Patrons come and go without warning, stepping in from lands I've never heard of, trading tales and songs and riddles like currency. And every night, another line of the Song of Velcrin reveals itself. On the second night, a sailor from the Sky Islands sang in his sleep. The tune curled through the rafters and a phrase etched itself into the wall in golden script. Beneath the cup, the world is poured, remember what the stars ignored. On the third night, a blind harpist ran her fingers along the counter and whispered, "The name of truth is always sung, not spoken. Each line a piece of the whole. Each verse awakening something ancient and vast within the Gilded Mug." And last night, she returned. The cloaked woman, rain-soaked once more, stepped through the door as if no time had passed. "I found the fifth verse," she said, eyes wide. "But the sixth, it's inside the tavern. Buried in its memory. In yours." I blinked. "Mine?" She nodded. "You're part of it now. You were always part of it." And that's when I remembered. I was 5 years old, sitting on my uncle's knee in this very tavern. He hummed a tune to lull me to sleep. I never knew what it was, just a warm blur of notes and the scent of mead-soaked oak. But now I remember the words. I sang them aloud. "The door that opens never shuts, so drink and dream and don't ask much." The tavern shuddered. The lanterns flared. The mugs clinked in harmony. And a hidden panel in the floor creaked open. Inside it? A vial. Not of liquid, but of sound, humming softly, pulsing like a heartbeat. The sixth verse. The cloaked woman took it reverently. "One more," she said. "Just one verse left. And then the song will be complete." I looked around at my walking, dreaming tavern. At the mugs floating patiently. At the humming beams, the glowing hearth, the traveling patrons who sang in their sleep. "One more verse," I said, "and then what?" She met my eyes. "Then it chooses. Then it sings back." And just like that, she vanished again. Honestly, I'm starting to think she does that for dramatic effect. But the tavern kept walking. And me? I keep pouring, keep listening. Every clink of a glass might be a lyric. Every guest a missing stanza. The Gilded Mug is taking me somewhere. Somewhere old and strange and beautiful. So come in, traveler. Pull up a chair. The bar still stands even if the floor beneath you wanders. And the song isn't finished yet.